And hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new type of video series with me, Umber Rays, in Let's Learn Together, Dissidia NT, Final Fantasy. Yes, as you have noticed, I have made a couple of new graphics and a little bit of what I hope you will find is an improvement to my videos. Although I do still have a lot to learn about them, this is a brand new series about learning how to play Final Fantasy, the new Dissidia game that is coming out very soon in North America and is currently out in Japan. Now, maybe you have an interest, maybe you don't have an interest. That really isn't what well, I hope if you do have an interest, maybe you're still deciding about whether or not you want to play this game, and I hope this to be an accessible, easy series where we will start very, very basically and eventually move up to the much more complex methods of gameplay as well as techniques. So, for this first episode, we are going to start nice and easy and assume that you know very little about the Dissidia series. But with that being said, we're also not going to dwell too long on anything. This is meant to be a nice, easy intro that will eventually ramp up into a much more professional talking about mechanics and all that good stuff. So what is on today's menu? Well, for today's episode, we're going to talk quickly about the history of the series, the games in the series, the history of the arcade, as well as my impressions living in Japan and playing it, the future costs that will be involved with it, the progression, and the gameplay basics. Now, these are all very, very easy things and shouldn't be too difficult for the first episode. We will get into more specific stuff soon enough. So first of all, about the Dissidia series. Let's get that out of the way. Well, the first game came out in Japan on December 18th, 2008, and in North America on August 25th, 2009. It was basically an action RPG with a one-on-one arena-based elements. Now, summons at the time were very, very simple. As a matter of fact, let's just take a quick look over here. That was the wrong button, no problem. The original PSP game was very, very simple, but at the time it was something rather special to be seeing all of the Final Fantasy characters, or at least the main characters from different games, interacting with one another. Now originally, Tetsuya Nomura intended this to be a spin-off game while he was working on the Kingdom Hearts series, where it was going to be Disney characters apparently fighting one another. But somewhere along in development, he decided that he was a little bit uncomfortable with Disney characters just wailing on one another. And so at some point, the game was changed over to being a Final Fantasy game and changed in a few other aspects into what we know now. Now, for the time, the first Dissidia game came out on the PlayStation Portable and was a pretty darn good success. It sold about 1.8 million copies in worldwide sales, which, considering the PSP's user base, wasn't bad. And it got enough attention that it eventually got a sequel, where Tetsuya Nomura, who wanted the sequel, was able to add one of his favorite characters, if not, I believe his favorite character, Kain from Final Fantasy IV. The game sequel also added a few other things like an improved story mode and brand new characters, including characters such as Lightning, Preesh, and, of course, a fan favorite, Yuna, to name a few. And this Dissidia game sold, again, reasonably well. But going forward, Tetsuya Nomura remarked that the game, if it was to continue, would not continue in the same way as it had currently. From there, the Dissidia franchise entered into a little bit of a weird patch. where the games that ended up being made were based on different things. First of all, there was the rhythm game, Theater Rhythm for the DS, I believe, as well as eventually making its way to arcade, and I don't remember if phones, but there at least was some of them. Maybe it was 3DS. But the point is, it gave us a cute new way to look at Final Fantasy characters. Dear God, is still cute like this. But anyway, the Dissidia series also continued on the phone with Opera Omnia, which, yes, that is how it's pronounced. And the interesting thing as well was that it became more a turn-based RPG game with no ATB on the phone, but a weapon gacha system, where characters' weapons could be gotten through a gacha-like system, like Brave Exvius's unit-based system, just entirely based on weapons. And for giving it a fair shake, the Opera Omnia is a pretty fun to play free game. I've been playing it for free since it launched and had no real interest in spending money, just playing it every so often. But with that being said, the timeline of Dissidia has been a little bit strange to say the least, with the first game being the last in the series, and since then the games have been going backwards. Dissidia Duodecim 012, or however you say that stupid title, which is an incredibly long title by the way, and not one I'm particularly crazy about saying. So we'll just call it Duodecim. Duodecim ended up being a prequel since the first game had such a clear ending. And the story of Duodecim basically revolves around the idea of Cosmos and Chaos, two goddesses who summon warriors to fight for them, and basically the Dissidia series ended up being some kind of central connection between all of the Final Fantasies, and for the first time, other than references, Final Fantasies truly being connected outside of their numbered series. Now all of this is pretty interesting, but let's head back over here. And so we finally come to the game most currently in the series, Dissidia NT Final Fantasy. Going forward, this game has become a 3-on-3 arcade shooter. Or arcade fighter, I should say. Sorry, I'm thinking about a reference I want to make just in a little bit here. So, the arcade came out in 2015 here in Japan, and I've had the good pleasure of sinking quite a bit of yen into this game. And I should make mention that the arcade has a wonderful fan base that is fairly loyal, if not very loyal. There are many weekends where I go to an arcade, just taking a peek at it, and most of the arcade machines are busy prior to the console's release. And a lot of players have big, massive levels and play weekly and sink a lot of yen into the game. Now, the arcade has been one of the biggest supporters in Dissidia NT's development. Something that you should know is that Dissidia NT was not developed as an arcade game first. It was actually developed from the ground up for the PlayStation 4. Train of thought went into a tunnel, not a problem. So the arcade was originally, and even now, the arcades run on PS4 technology. They look very, very fancy and very, very pretty, which is why Dissidia runs so smoothly, thankfully, upon its PS4 release here in Japan. But the arcades acted as a way for the developers to basically support development of this fighting game to increase and expand the roster. When the game came out, they said that they would eventually look forward to a PS4 release once the character roster had been fleshed out, and the arcade was a great way of supporting the game for a long time and continuing development. That being said, it is definitely and was an expensive experience for me, as the arcades, forgetting the fact that they can just be a little bit too busy, are a little bit expensive at 100 yen a play, or if you have a Nessica card, which, just almost out of reach, one of these, then you can get a bonus of basically getting 3 plays for 200 yen. And so the arcades were a great way to experience it in Japan for a while, but as all things must happen, Square Enix has finally made good on their promise and been bringing it to the consoles. Now, while we're talking about supporting thing and the history of the arcade, before we get into progression and gameplay basics, let's talk about future costs really quick. Yes, there is a season pass, and yes, to clear the air really quickly before anyone else brings up this question, there are loot boxes in the game. But from my experiences so far on the Japanese side, there has been no way, in-game or out-of-game, to buy these loot boxes. The only way to get them so far has been increasing my player rank, as well as just unlocking certain things in story, or making certain achievements in the game will give you a couple of pulls. When you use a pull, you basically get 3 items, which can be anything from emotes for characters, songs, player icons, or very rare, but not too incredibly rare, costumes and weapons. Now, the costumes and weapons are purely cosmetic, and you can purchase them in-game for using the currency in-game, which is also not purchasable outside of the game. So yes, there is loot box system, but it is mainly just for customization options, songs, all of this kind of stuff, and it's just a general nice way of giving you a little bit of work to unlocking stuff. In terms of progression, we'll get to that a little bit later, but we do want to talk about future costs, and that is where this is where Square Enix will be asking for money, and a fair bit of money, to be totally honest. So Dissidia NT will be running a season pass. This has already been confirmed, and the pricing has been announced here in Japan. 4,000 yen, or a standalone character, will cost about 800 yen, which, depending on where you are, is somewhere probably between $7 and $10. We'll see what Square announces for the pricing in the USA, Canada, and other regions. But Square Enix has, in one of the more recent Dissidia live streams, announced what will be in the first season pass, which is 6 characters. Now, while they have not said who these characters are, and you are more than welcome to wait on purchasing the season pass, they are, most of them, brand new characters. We do know this. Now, it should be noted that in the stream, what he said was they gave a hint to which half of the Final Fantasies it would be in. The earlier Final Fantasies are considered 1 through 7, and the later Final Fantasies are considered 8 through 15. Now that we have that, the first character, and I will talk about something really quickly, the first character will be a male, brand new to the Dissidia series, from the newer half of Final Fantasy, so 8 and onwards. The second character will be a male, new to the Dissidia series, from the older half of Final Fantasy, so 1 through 7. The next will be a female character, new to the Dissidia series, and from 8 to 15. Who these are, we have no idea. The next one will be male, brand new, from the newer half of Final Fantasy titles, 8 and onwards. The next one will be a female previously appearing in a Dissidia game, which is a little bit confusing, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But it is from Final Fantasy VIII and onwards. Now, the Dissidia series does include Theater Rhythm, apparently, as well as Opera Omnia, which has a ton of female characters. But if we look at just the original Dissidia games, then it is probably either Yuna or Preach. Now, since Final Fantasy XI has only one character so far, my bet is probably that it could be Preach, but it could be later. And the last character is a male, brand new from the newer half of Final Fantasy, so 8 and onwards. So many new characters to the Dissidia series will be in the first season pass. Now, if you're wondering about how this content will come out, so am I. But leading up to the release, the Dissidia team was delivering one brand new character every 2 months, included in balance patches. In between these 2 months would be either a new stage or a brand new summon. Now, I haven't heard anything about summons at the current point in time, but we can possibly expect that either February or March will be the first character for this season pass, and these will be the first added characters for the first year of this game. If the pattern follows, things may change. But continuing on, you may be asking about the grand plan of this game. Well, Dissidia NT is planned to have a total of 50 characters. Now, this could mean quite a few season passes, the prices could change here and there, and it depends on the game's lifespan and how it is accepted, by the fans and how long it is played. So far, it definitely has a strong following in Japan, talking about the arcade for a moment. The arcade had a lot of players that have continuously supported it for over a year. So if you're wondering what the lifespan of this game will be, there's a good chance it will be followed pretty faithfully by a good group, because it does come from the Final Fantasy fan base, which is pretty darn loyal. And so now we talk about progression. Now, the progression in the game, you may be curious, because 1, what is the story like? 2, how long does it take to start unlocking stuff? Well, in the first week, I basically, without the arcade transfer here that is available here in Japan, that will not be available in North America because, well, you guys never got the arcade. Sorry. But anyway, in the first week, with a moderate to fairly good amount of playing, I was able to get to rank 25, 26 fairly easily, which gave me 2 loot boxes per level, giving me a fair number of randomly assorted costumes, and as well getting through most of the story gave me approximately 20,000 gil, which is enough to purchase 1 costume, 1 weapon, and maybe a song. Currently in the Japanese side, songs are about, I think, about 3,000 to 4,000 coins. Weapons are worth about 7,200 coins, that one I know a little bit better, and costumes are worth about 10,800 coins. Now, the numbers are high and it does take a while to unlock, but there's always a chance you will get your stuff from the boxes. Either way, it just basically ends up giving you a nice progression rate At the point I have at, the level rate has slowed down a little bit, but not considerably noticeably, and most of the leveling I have done is offline, just trying to mess around with different characters. And so that is basically that. So lastly, let's talk about gameplay, because gameplay is what really matters in a game. And Dissidia NT is a 3-on-3 arcade fighter. Now, if you've never played an arcade fighter, that's perfectly fine. This game does have somewhat of a reputation of being difficult to master, but easy to pick up and play. When I started playing it here in Japan in the arcades, I had no problem just picking it up and finding a character I liked. There are a lot of different characters. There are, I believe, 28 available at launch of different classes, including the... I lost my sheet there. The Assassin, the Marksman, the Vanguard, and the Specialist, all which we will go into greater detail in the second video. And while each of these characters at their base rank will only have 1 HP attack, or in very rare cases 2 HP attacks, all of them will gain a total of 3 HP attacks over the course. And if you're wondering, currently there are no plans to add a 4th HP attack to any characters because of balancing the game. Also, unlike previous Dissidia games, your bravery attacks are locked in. Now, I should talk a little bit about this in the gameplay basics, so let's bring up another screen. Now, currently here, we have numbers all over the screen, and a lot of people have wondered or been horribly concerned about the amount of stuff in the HUD. Now, let me tell you, they've made a few adjustments to this HUD, I believe, since this screenshot was taken. It's basically smaller now. But if you're curious what it is like, if you're focusing on the HUD, you're doing it wrong. Simply put, the HUD is there for information at a glance. Basically, you take a quick peek at it, and then you focus directly back on the game. Dissidia does follow a lot of the previous games of the bravery and the HP attack. In other words, bravery attacks will gain you a total of number of points. For instance, Zidane here currently has 15,112 attacks. Bravery. Sorry. My brain's a little fried today. He has 1,512 bravery points. Now, when you initiate an HP attack, all of that goes into damage, providing it hits, taking away from the enemy's HP that it does hit, setting you back to a total of 1,000 base. Now, if your opponent hits you with a bravery attack, it removes bravery from your total, potentially putting you, when you go below 0, into a break status, meaning that you cannot do HP damage for a small period of time, and if you break an enemy, you end up getting a lot of extra bravery to your total. By hitting enemies with enough when your bravery is high enough, depleting all of their HP will knock out one of the 3 bars seen. The blue bars represent your team, where the red bars represent the opponent's team. And while you have 3 people, any of the enemy characters can be knocked out 3 times to achieve a victory. And in general, we are going to talk more about gameplay in the second episode. Currently, I had plans to do a couple of videos in this. Look right here, you can even see my video screen, which is still blank. We will be looking at that in the near future, but for now, I do want to make mention that my PlayStation 4 controller is a little bit, well, it died on me. I even took it apart to try and save it, and as it turns out, no, it's dead. It's dead. So I will be getting a replacement coming tomorrow night. So in the future videos, we will be able to take a look at gameplay and do a better explanation. But as this video is approaching 26 minutes already, this is a good place to stop for today and just let that sink in. So, in the next video, we will be covering tutorials and basic gameplay, as well as we will be looking at 2 out of the 4 classes available in the game. And that's basically it. Yes, so I hope you have found this video both informative and interesting, and I hope you will give Dissidia NT Final Fantasy, title that just rolls off the tongue, a try when it comes out a little bit later this month. So until then, folks, that is all for today. I hope to see you all next time when we will be covering more and learning how to play this game together. So until then, good luck, and I really need a new PS4 controller.